Okay, welcome back to video 17, and we left off at Luke 2:32, so we'll start at 3:6. And I think we're seeing the same thing like we just went through on Isaiah 42, which was about Gentiles. But, if you watch the Jews versus Gentiles, and then every video we've gone through, I keep saying over and over, there's no point in quoting all these verses about the 12 tribes and salvation for the 12 tribes if that's not what you're trying to teach people. If you want a globalist interpretation, then there's no point in going back and quoting all these verses to make your point about salvation from Christ, which is, so what we need to be doing is teaching Christ from Genesis, Moses, the prophets, and Psalms, which is what Paul did as well. And Paul learned from Christ, so we should do the same thing. We're not doing that. We're not going back to Genesis, pointing out all the mentions of Christ from Genesis 15, from Melchizedek and all that. We want to debate that, but then everything we look at is quoting in context. It's the 12 tribes that were predestinated and all that. So, people still want to argue, well, yeah, it does say all these things, and it does say all this in the New Testament, but, except the Gentiles, as I showed, are also 12 tribes. So there's no place in here where we're going to see that all of a sudden all of this is taken away from the 12 tribes, and now everything that was promised to the 12 tribes goes to just whoever, a global community, whoever appeals to Christ. It never says that. There's no prophecy. You're not going to see any prophecy because the only prophecy that they could point to was actually a prophecy about the 12 tribes, but they changed the word nations to Gentiles and then redefined and then told you, well, Gentiles equals anybody. See, that's what the church did. And whoever started that, you can debate among yourselves how it got started, who did it, but the point was to take all these promises away from the 12 tribes to the point that they wouldn't understand even who they are, and that all of this prophecy has been working out ever since Christ was here, and now he's back soon, and they don't even know that they're Israelites. That all these Jews for Christ have been teaching Christ since Christ left. So, the whole idea was to destroy that teaching, which it has been done. So we'll just go on and show what it actually says. We'll skip the ones we've already done. 3:6, we've gone over that. That was in Mark. So we went over that. I don't need to do that again. Now, Luke 4:4 is a quote to Deuteronomy 8:3. And looking back, I only show this one cross-reference to Matthew 4:4. So we'll go back up to Matthew 4:4. Life proceeds from the Spirit of God. And this was probably where he was speaking to Satan. And so basically telling Satan you need to follow God's law was the point. So, we already know that one. Worship Yahweh only. Okay, well, we know that, but there's no other specific quote on that, so we'll go back and look at it, even though we know what that means. Exodus 34:14. So, let's just go back to Exodus 34:14. Well, yeah. Yep, I know this section. Alright, so if you back up to, really this is important here, because this is the important thing I've been saying about the book of life. Just back up to the end of chapter 32 and look at that. Starting about verse 31. So Moses is talking to Christ. That's what he's doing. That's why he esteemed Christ, because that's who he's talking to, the ever-living. Certainly this people have sinned a great sin when they made a god of gold. So there's the golden calf. but yet remove their sin, and if not, strike me, Moses, out of the book of life. So, then the ever-living answered, well, what is their sin to me? I will strike them from my book. But now go and lead the people where I command you. In other words, where I told you to do. And my messenger shall go before your face. Well, my messenger, my angel, that's Christ going before him. Right? So he's got Christ the rock with him. He's got the rod of Aaron with him, which he strikes the rock. So that's his spirit. So they're carrying the Spirit of God along with them. That's Jacob's pillar stone they're carrying along. And that's why he said, my messenger shall go before your face. So they're literally, that's why it says they drank of that spiritual rock in 1 Corinthians 10:4. Yes. They had the spiritual rock with them. They drank water from that rock, and others, but still, when they needed water, he'd lay it down, tap it, and they'd get some water out of it. A small spring of water would come out, and they would have water when they stopped. But when they were going to be somewhere for a period of time, he would strike other rocks. They said they'd have water coming from the crags and the rocks and so forth. And then when they were at Mount Sinai, they had the rock of Oreb, but created a lake for them. So they had plenty of water there because they sacrificed a lot of animals. They needed that water. Okay. So there you go. I will strike them from my book. In the day of visitation, I will visit upon them their sins. Talking about the day of visitation is the second coming of Christ. That's what he's talking about. It's like I said, he's letting the wheat and the tares grow up together until he comes back, and that's the judgment day, second coming, when he actually does that. Thus the ever-living punished the people, verse 35, for what they had done regarding the calf. Okay? So then he tells you, go from here, and the people, from the land of Egypt, which I promised to Abraham, and Isaac, and Jacob, to your descendants I will give it. So here again, 12 tribes, I will send my messenger before your face. So, double witness, he'll send Christ out before them and drive out the Canaanites. So it's the Spirit of God that drives out the Canaanites. So that's Christ the rock, which is why we have Christ the rock in 1 Corinthians. It was a promise, and there it is. So, he tells them, but he's going to make it a journey for them. Yeah, that's 33:3. So, which grieved him because, okay, well, so that's why it's 40 years, because you're a stiff-necked, rebellious. He says, if I came a single moment into your midst, I could destroy you. However, strip off your arms, I'll make it known what I will do. And Moses seized the tabernacle, pitched it for himself outside. Yeah. Can't be there because of their sin, in other words. So they were all obliged to come to him in the hall of assembly, which is outside of the camp. But when he took the tabernacle, it says all the people rose in insurrection. So they weren't happy with that. And when Moses went with the tabernacle, verse 9, the cloud, okay, the cloud, that's the tornado that was behind them before. Well, there was a tornado in front and a tornado behind. The one behind they mentioned as a cloud, sand, cloud of sand. So it's a tornado of sand behind, tornado fire in front. So this looks like the tornado of sand descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle. And the Word was with Moses. Yes, well, Christ was that Word. So there's Christ. When all the people saw the tornado, which is what it was, standing at the door, then they all bowed towards that tent. Okay, so they recognized that that was the ever-living, or that was their Redeemer. Okay, there the ever-living spoke with Moses face to face. And that's why Moses esteemed Christ. It's right there. The ever-living. It's the Spirit of Christ. He just told you twice the angel would be with him. And there it is. Spoke directly to him. That's why you get the comment. As a man speaks with his friend. And Moses said, "You have instructed me as to whom you will send with me. You have, however, said, I know you by name, you have found favor. So if I have found favor, then teach me your path, so that I may know you, since I have found favor in your sight, and perceive that your people are this nation." Your people, not just anybody, they're this nation of Israelites, which from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, which the promise was from. So it's only 12 tribes, doesn't include anyone else. So I wanted to distinguish Moses so they would follow him. In other words, yes, well, show me your majesty. He says, I've passed all my beauty before your face, made myself known to you openly by my name of the ever-living. I show favor to those I love, compassion to those I compassion. Think mercy, verse 19, 33:19. So that's the context right there of Romans. Remember Romans 9, 22 and 23, about the two different groups of Israelites that he formed, like formed the clay in his hands, that kind of thing. Okay. Let's go back and read that. Well, that's it right here. But he says, no man can see me and live. Mount me on the rock, and his majesty shall pass over. So you can't look on my face. So this really sounds like God, no man can see me. But actually he did see the back of him. So I still say this is Christ, because that's the only thing that really makes good sense. So we go on down to chapter 34. Cut 2 tablets of stones. Alright. Well, they already had to be following God's law. They violated God's law by building the calf. So they already had his law. They had his law from Abraham. But now they're going to write it down for them so they can look at it. And, So well, we didn't remember it, right? Alright. So we always know that. Then the ever-living descended in the cloud, that's 34:5. He called on the name of Jehovah when the ever-living passed over his face. Living God of gentleness and pity, slow to anger, great in mercy and truth, preserving mercy to thousands, taking away passion and rebellion, forgiving sins, but not ceasing to visit the passions of the fathers upon their children, upon the children of their children to the 3rd and 4th generation. Okay, but that's not taking them out of the book of life. That's just punishing them. So, just come near to us. They're stiff-necked people. Pardon our passions and sins and give us our inheritance. Okay. Well, what was their inheritance? Well, their inheritance was Christ. And he replied, now, in other words, being resurrected. Now I make a covenant with all your people. I'll produce wonders such as have not been from creation in all the earth or in any nation. And every people among who you are shall see the work of the ever-living. So, in other words, this is the whole idea of making them into a peculiar people. So everybody else sees, look over there and see this nation, see how it's blessed. It's different from every other nation. And the things they do, you see, they're always above everybody else. That's the whole idea of being the peculiar people. Now, you'll worship the sins of your fathers to the 3rd and 4th generation. So that's important that you continue, doing what's right. Because if you don't, it's going to bear on your children. However, you can also get struck from the book permanently. So you can opt out if you want to opt out and say, well, this isn't my God anymore and I'm going to worship this other God, or just reject God, then you opted out. Like I said, multiple videos, you can opt out. but that's not smart. Many people have done it, but you know, they like whatever they've got. They like the money. They like the have all their stuff now, so they opt out. But you could have had Christ working for you as the rock, the shield. What he already told you. For what I will do by you will be splendid. So we're still in 34:10. Attend to what I've communicated you. I'll drive before you. See, I will drive. So that's Christ the rock. So drive these people out. Keep yourselves from making treaties with the residents of the land when you come to it, for fear they shall be a snare in your midst. In other words, don't make treaties with other non-Israelite nations. Jeez, how many times have we done that? Because your nation is peculiar. You have Christ the rock. If you just accept that, then do what he told you to do. Just follow his law, do the right thing, don't hurt each other, don't go and attack, don't go around the world attacking other countries and sending your military. Yeah, he'll give you the best military, but not to use as a, to just go around and break into nations and steal their oil and their water and their gold and to, make slaves out of them. That's not what it's for. That's not Christ the rock. Okay, he just keeps the peace. He creates a justice system based on his law, and he expects everybody to follow it. And then he puts you at the head of the justice system, so you're judges and all this apparatus here to administer his law. That's what you're supposed to be. That's the whole idea of the kingdom priest, the royal priesthood. He shows, everybody else sees that God's with you, so they recognize. That's why they go up to the Feast of Tabernacles, which we've already been over at the end of Zechariah. They seize your hand, go up to the temple to participate in the Feast of Tabernacles, because they're commanded to do that. They have to do it, but they're a little afraid to walk up, and approach by their own, because they realize the temple's not for them. It's for these Israelites, so they go with you, so they can approach and do what they're commanded to do. And if they don't get rain. That's the end of Zechariah. All right. Overthrow their altars, break down their pillars. So don't allow any of these other people to worship other gods. Cut down their shrines, for you shall not worship another god, for ever living. Christ and God is jealous of his name. Beware of making alliances with the inhabitants of the land, for fear that you will whore after their gods. So he already said, don't make treaties with them. Don't sacrifice to their gods. Don't approach to eat at their altars. Don't take their sons and daughters for marriage. Nor shall you make a metallic god for yourself. That's verse 17. 18. You should keep the feast of unleavened bread for 7 days. So what did he say? He's a jealous God. That was verse 14. Worship Yahweh only. Don't make other gods. However, it's not just worshiping him only. Don't marry their children. Right? So I could say, and you'll be a peculiar people. Right? Because that's what he's telling them. And that's really Exodus 19:6. So I'll just write, because that's what it is. If you follow God's law. There you go. That's what he's telling them. So 12 tribes will be chosen people if they follow God's law. And that's what he's telling them. No treaties, no marriage of their children. That's what makes you separate from all other people on earth and blessed by Christ. Which he's mentioned that many times. Alright, so let's go to Luke 4:17. And we've been there, so we'll see what that, or 4:11, sorry. Alright, 4:11. He shall instruct his angels concerning you, and they will protect you. Okay, well, this is the part about This is Christ speaking to Satan here. So he's basically telling Satan to follow God's law. You can tell Satan that's what you have to do to live. So that cross reference, Psalms 91, Deuteronomy 6:16. That's all Christ there speaking to Satan. Down to 12. Well, and here it says the devil, having then completed every trial, departed from Christ. So that's 4:11, 4:12. So we don't even have to go back and look at that because we've already been through that. We know what that is. Okay. So let's jump down to Luke 4:19. 17:18. Proclaim the year honored by the Lord. Having rolled up the book. So, this is Jesus, starting in verse 14, returned to Galilee with the power of the Spirit. His reputation spread throughout the whole of the neighborhood. He taught in the synagogues with the approval of all. Afterwards came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. Okay, so he was a Nazarene. And as his custom was, he entered the synagogue on the day of rest, so the Sabbath. Standing up to read, there was handed to him the roll of prophet Isaiah. So he had the scriptures, what we would say, of the prophet Isaiah. Opened the roll, he found the place where it was written. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. So there's Christ. So you should make a little note in your Bible, Isaiah 61:1. That's Christ, right? By which he has appointed me to tell the good news to the poor. He sent me to heal the brokenhearted, proclaim freedom to those in bondage, restoration of sight to the blind, set at liberty those who are oppressed, proclaim the year honored by the Lord. Right? That's the year when he returns, Judgment Day. Having rolled up the book, he returned it, sat down. All the eyes of the synagogue were fixed upon him, and then he began to say to them, today is this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. Yes, well, the fulfillment, okay, this is the beginning. This isn't the this is the year honored by the Lord. Okay, the year of Christ's birth and all that was, you can look at it a little bit in multiple ways. Okay, the year that it's speaking to, you could say, was the year of his birth, because that's where it starts. But he says, a Spirit of the Lord is upon me. So you could say, okay, well, the Spirit of the Lord upon him is when the dove came down. I mean, you could look at it however you want. It's talking about Christ. However, let's go look at that. Because it's not quoted. 61:1 at least is not quoted somewhere else. So let's just go look then at 61:1. Mighty Lord's Spirit is on me. Yes, the Lord chose me to preach to the oppressed. He sent me to bind broken hearts, so to heal the broken hearts, proclaim to the prisoners freedom, to the bondsmen, those in captivity, in other words, to proclaim times delighting the Lord, and a period of gift from our God, and comfort to all those who mourn. All right. So that's about Christ. However, what's the context of the time? The time of that. When does that happen? Well, usually you want to back up. And who's he speaking to? Okay. So usually you want to back up. Well, the best place for backing up would be down to 59:19. He's talking about the isles, and he says, then from the west they'll see the Lord's power, speaking about Christ, from the sunrise his glory when he comes like a torrent. So this is the standard. They'll see his standard, in other words, that's Christ, the standard. Fierce wind, the Lord drives along. Okay, that fierce wind is the same wind we just read about, that tornado of sand, when he was at the temple with Moses, which I said was Christ, and bringing redemption to Zion. That's what he does at Judgment Day. Separates the wheat from the tares, driving rebellion from Jacob. Well, we're still rebelling, so it hasn't happened yet. I will make this my treaty with them. So here's where the new covenant is finally fully realized. When they're resurrected and all that kind of thing, they finally like I said before, the child will be able to lead a lion around by the hand, and it'll eat grass and all those things. That's the period we're talking about. The Spirit I place upon you, and the words I put in your mouth shall not go from your mouth, or the mouth of your race, or the mouth of the seed of your race. In other words, think your posterity from now and forever. And that quotes back to Romans 11:27. All right. However, that, what we just read, also quotes over here 60. So you go over to 60:16, and the mighty of Jacob I redeemed. So, and that goes down to 21. When your people will always be just. All right, well, look at 20. We just have to read. All this is connected. So, look, let's just go back to the beginning of chapter 60. Rise to the light, for your dawn has arrived. The Lord's splendor above you has sprung. So that's when you see Christ returning. For though darkness may cover the earth and black gloom to the peoples, the light shines over you in his splendor on you. So here's where you have the light shining on these Gentiles. Okay. But these Gentiles is redemption to Zion. And we're going to see it mentions the 12 tribes all through here. It tells you there are 12 tribes. So the Gentiles, it tells you, not everyone. Kings come to your sunrise. All right. We've already seen that prophecy. So all these prophecies connect. Lift your eyes around, collecting come to you. In other words, collecting those in captivity and all the 12 tribes. Your sons come from afar, from the four corners of the earth. Then your daughters are carried in baskets. In other words, you will see it and run. You shall fear with a galloping heart when rolls up to you all the wealth of the sea, and nations come dancing to you. Yeah, Gentiles. So here's the return of all your people who were sent into captivity. So these are the redeemed. And carrying frankincense, and you read all that, and you go on down. Who are these flying up like a cloud, like doves on long wings? Yes, these are all the redeemed. When Christ shines on them, brings them back. Why turn the islesmen to me? Well, mention the islesmen many times in prophecy, speaking about these Israelites that had gone across the Mediterranean, populated Ireland, England, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, all these white Israelite countries that, were the countries that were teaching the message of Christ. Bring your sons from afar to the name and Israel's holy, your honor. Okay, so there's the same context of 61:1. Then strangers. Okay, so there are strangers, and their kings form alliance. All right, but here it says, whom in anger I struck, but I tenderly love. Never shut to the nations who bring you their wealth, with their kings, for nation and kingdom which serves not to you shall perish, and the nations destructive destroyed. Okay, that's what he said at the end of Zechariah 14. So those are, if you want a Gentile nation, it's the ones that obviously don't know Christ, so that's what it's talking about, but they'll serve you. Okay. Then through that, scorners bend down to the soles of your feet. Verse 14, proclaim you the city of life, Zion, the holy of Israel. Wait a minute. Okay. So the city of life, remember? Follow God's law, and that's how you obtain the life. It's talking about New Jerusalem and the 12 tribes, Zion, the holy of Israel. It says it. Instead of being forsaken and hated. Remember, they hated me without a cause, so they'll hate you. I will make you a glory forever. This Zion, the holy of Israel, right? You shall suck milk from the nations. Notice, okay, there's the non-Israelite nations. Their kings' laps shall support. In other words, what they'll grow the food. They'll bring food to you, and they'll bring things that you need to you, and they'll serve you. I, the Lord, saved, and the mighty of Jacob set free. Okay, well, here's Jacob setting free from captivity. House of God was judged. Now, like he said, the light comes out, Christ the light comes out, and it falls on you. And he says, Zion, he's bringing Zion back, and the 12 tribes. For brass, I'll bring gold, iron, bring silver. In other words, you're in captivity with shackles, brass, and iron. But now he's going to bring gold and silver, and he said iron, bring stones, make your rulers gentle and your taxers just. No more shall oppression be heard in your land. So now you're going to have a righteous justice system. No one's going to be oppressed. You'll just pay if you commit a sin. You'll pay for it, whatever God's law determines. It's your walls called salvation. Thanks be in your gates. No more shall the sun be your light. In other words, now it's going to be Christ. And at night the moon give you her light. But the Lord shall be your light everlasting. That's verse 19. Your God be the splendor for you. Your sun never set, and the moon never cease. For the Lord shall be to you a perpetual light. Exactly. To you. Not to the world, but to the Jacob he set free. These nations of 12 tribes, the Islesmen, you see. And you can go on back to chapter 59, 58, and every other chapter you want. Look at 58. It starts right out. He's declared to my people their crimes, to the household of Jacob their sins. Yet daily they seek and love learning my path like a race, not forgetting God's law. They seek my just laws and with joy approach God, the household of Jacob. But the ones that rejected it, in other words, all right. So you can go through all of this and you can see it's about the 12 tribes, about Jacob, Israel. All right, so here he comes back. We're just at 60:21 here. The perpetual lights, Christ coming back to the 12 tribes, Israelites. When your people will always be just, they shall conquer the earth. Okay, so they're conquerors in Revelation. The kindred people in Revelation, the 12 tribes in Revelation, 144,000 in Revelation, the conquerors. Like a branch my hand set and may grow. Alright. The branch. Think almond branch, the children of God. It's a family tree. If you will become thousands, right? The weak, a strong nation, I, the Lord, hasten it now. Okay, this is when he returns. It's the end of the tribulation period. When he pops back up and says, here I am. Okay, then you get to 61. And my Lord's Spirit is on me. Lord chose me to preach to the oppressed. He sent me, so he's talking about Christ. 61:3, to give Zion's mourners a gift. Zion. We know what that is. In place of their ashes, a crown. Changed to their sorrow. Oil giving joy. So Christ clothed them in song. So think the song of Moses in Revelation. Proclaim them true oaks. Okay. The fair plants of the Lord. That's people as trees. That's family trees. You'll have an abundance of joy because now you're redeemed. They shall rebuild old ruins. So their country was in ruins, but it will be rebuilt. The wrecks of the past they shall raise and renew ruined towns who they just lost in war. Wrecks from ages and ages even. So then the strangers shall stand and shall shepherd your flocks. So now here you have those Gentiles, those non-Israelite people, taking care of your flocks. They're growing your food. They're doing all these things. Sons of strangers shall plow and shall garden. So your gardeners will be the Gentiles, non-Israelites. And you shall be called, you, priest of the Lord, your title, the servants of God. There's your kings and priests in Revelation 1, 6, and 7. You shall feed on the wealth of the heathen. So, these heathen here, or these non-Israelite nations, They didn't want to know anything about Christ, didn't know we're not chosen. However, the royal priesthood will be the priests and servants of God, administering justice, which we just read. Okay? And rule over their pride. In other words, other people, instead of your shame and your double disgrace because you just, had your country destroyed because you weren't following his law. Now you'll cheer when you spoil them, when double you season their land, for to you lasting pleasure. To you lasting pleasure, not to the world. For I am the Lord giving justice, or loving justice. Think justice system based on his law. Plunder and crime I detest, which is what you're being judged for. So I give them the wages they earned, in other words, the ones that did that were plundering and, using your country and the people in your country to go around the world and wage perpetual war, which is what you're doing right now. So, if you want to continue on doing that, that's fine. You're going to be judged for it, and it's not going to be great. But just keep right on. Do what you think is right. All right? But I'll make lasting my treaty with you. Yes. Second covenant. All right. And your race shall be known to the Gentiles. Okay. Your race. The one that he just said, kings and priests, the royal priesthood above, they'll be known to the heathen. In other words, the heathen, all these people that are plowing and gardening and providing food for you and helping you rebuild and all that, all these people who have nothing to do with, Christ and his word, they'll come. And your shoots in the midst of the tribes, all who see them will treat with respect. Well, of course. So the Gentiles will treat with respect the ones that they can see that Christ is, on them, and they're the royal priesthood, so they're going to treat you with respect because they're going to recognize it as the race that is blessed by the Lord. So the race that was blessed by the Lord from the beginning of time was the 12 tribes, the chosen. We just read that. Exodus 34:14, yeah. But of our race, those that reject Christ and worship golden calves and worship the star god Kion and Moloch and want to burn your children to the fire, well, go ahead. You want to abort your babies, that's the end result of what worshiping Moloch was. All right. So, he told you having a lot of children would be a blessing. But we don't teach that too much now, I guess. Okay. Well, how do we know? There's 12 tribes. Just keep reading. There's chapter 61. With joy I rejoice in the Lord. Verse 10. My soul be glad, who has clothed me in salvation's robes. This royal priesthood has spread mercy's cloak over me and told you, follow his law. Those are the ones who will get mercy. Like a bridegroom adorned with a crown. Like a bride who is decked with her gems. Well, gee, isn't that in Revelation 21 and the 12 crops and all the mentions of the 12 and 12 this and 12 that, 12 gates and 12 mentions of 12 in Revelation? 144,000 of the 12 tribes and kindred tribes, in other words, right? The royal priesthood, all these things, the conqueror, the servant, and everything I've taught in Revelation. There it is. And the gems mentioned in Revelation. It's all right there. For as the earth shoots up her plants, think crops at the end there. 22. Crops are your children, the offspring of the 12 tribes. Family tree. And as a garden produces from seeds, so still it's talking about family tree. So the great Lord makes righteousness grow, and from all nations joyfulness brings. Well, yes, once you have this justice system reestablished, which is what he told you to do to begin with, then everything will bring joy because people will not be getting advantage over other people, and there will be no more war, and everything will be calm. No fights, and when someone kills someone or robs someone or whatever it is they do, there'll be a quick justice. It'll be according to his law, and it'll all be worked out. They won't go to jail. It'll just be whatever he said. If he said you rape somebody and you die, well, that's just how it happens. But your royal priesthood will be the ones that make that decision, and they'll have Christ above them, confirming that yes, that's what I said. So go ahead and do it. All right. Yeah. Well, okay. We know that's for 12 tribes. Look at chapter 62. For Zion, I will not be still. In other words, all the stuff he just said, he's going to do for Zion, for Jerusalem, I will not rest till her pardon arrives like a flash. Okay, her pardon, the mercy for the sins, for not following God's law, showing them mercy, the remnant and others. And salvation shines out like a lamp. And the heathen, your pardon can see. Well, okay, that might say Gentiles, but the heathen, in other words, are those who don't perceive as law. It's the heathen of the 12 tribes of the Israelites. And all the kingdoms your splendor will behold. Just what we just read. When to you shall be given a new name. Right. Which the mouth of the Lord will impose. And you will be a beautiful crown in the head of the Lord, an imperial staff in the hand of your God. No more will they call you forsaken. No more shall they call your land waste, but you shall be named my delight, the bride the Lord loves. Okay. But wasn't that Hosea 1, 9 and 10? And wasn't that Ezekiel 37? About all 12 tribes coming together under Christ and being pardoned for their sins. And wasn't the context? There's no worldly context here. Your bride, that's the 12 tribes. The bride, that's in, the bridesmaids. Same context. They're not saying, well, I'm just going to bring everybody. No, he just distinguished between 12 tribes and these heathen, which would serve the 12 tribes. He didn't say all those people, if they, call on Christ, they'll, be part of this salvation and blah, 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 and others that don't will serve you. No, the context, always 12 tribes. Well, okay. Doesn't that say that in 7? On Jerusalem, 6 and 7, on Jerusalem's wall, I fix my watchmen. He fixes and places Jerusalem, the glory of the earth. In other words, the Jerusalem people. He's not talking about dirt, because he already told you he's bringing down New Jerusalem, and it's 1,500 miles square and 1,500 miles high, approximately. You can argue about the exact size. At any rate, maybe it's 144,000. 1,440 miles instead of 1,500 miles. Who knows? But he swore by his right and powerful arm, I will no more give your corn to your foes to devour. So yes, that was them in judgment. 12 tribes in judgment. Alright. Because when you get down to verse 10, pass through the gates, clear the road, the gates, New Jerusalem, 12 tribes, right? Clear the road, build up the highway and clear it from stones, raise the standard over the tribes. Okay, well that standard's mentioned more than 10 times just in Isaiah. It's on my chart. Look at the Isaiah chart. Standard, banner, ensign, all through Isaiah. All goes to the 12 tribes. It doesn't say the whole world, and whoever claims Christ now will be the standard that everybody will be judged by. Never says that. No, it's the 12 tribes being the standard. Thus the Lord has proclaimed to the bounds of the earth, tell Zion's daughter, your Savior's come. So it doesn't say go tell the world. He brings the wage with him, his work's been done, and they call you blessed, the people set free by the Lord, the name you sought for, the town not forsaken. Okay, well, 12 tribes. Now, let's go back and look at the cross-reference to Isaiah on this. Okay, so it links back to 40. So you just go back to chapter 40, starts right out. Comfort, comfort my people. Your God has commanded, and keep in mind there's no Gentiles back here until you get to 42, and that's nations of 12 tribes. Speak to Jerusalem, and to her proclaim that her warfare is finished, her sin has been pardoned, twice more than her loss she will have from the Lord. And then it talks about, that's John the Baptist. The Lord's glory unveiled, let all see it at once, as the Lord's mouth has said. You can see that. It goes to 1 Peter 1:25, that our God's promise forever remains. Verse 8, well, that God's promise, that goes to 1 Peter 1:25, and remember, that's where the royal priesthood is, right there at 2:10 in 1 Peter, right? Okay. To the hilltop, go up with a message to Zion, with news for Jerusalem. Raise without fear the cities of Judah. Okay. Your God is power advancing. His arm is directing. His confidence and his work lies in front. He feeds like a shepherd. His flock is chosen. He takes up the lambs in his arms. The lambs are referred to the 12 tribes. Okay. And then when you continue on, of course, it's all about Israel, Jacob. Even in this one, we're still in 40. Talks about the islands. Other races won't be before him. The nobles. Why does Israel complain? Verse 26. Why does Jacob murmur? Okay. It's not globalists. Those that trust in the Lord are brought up on strong eagle's wings. That's the end of verse 40. Well, that's what just talked about up here. We just read that. So, same context. And then again, you get to this next one, verse 41. Get down to verse 8. But you, my servant, Israel and Jacob, whom I chose, from my friend, Abraham's race, or posterity, which we know, it's 12 tribes, I chose and called to you, named you as my friend, and your posterity. Okay. I chose and not forsook. Fear not, you are my race. Dread not, I am your God. So really, right here at the beginning, this should be over here at the end, you see. That should be the the end of chapter 62. Maybe they got it out of place. Okay. But, you can go on, but you won't see any other context here about people being saved and the nations other than the 12 tribes as God's coming from, the royal priesthood. There is no other context. They inserted the word Gentiles to throw people off, and then they stood up and said, oh, Gentiles, which all just means nations, we say that that's not Israel people. See? Then whoever did it, just look back through history, maybe you can figure out who's trying to con you. But whoever it is probably started by changing the word nation to Gentile. So you should probably start right there and think, well, who could have done that? Who's tried to con us, cover up our future? Because this is all prophecy about the return of Christ. So they don't want you to know, well, wait a minute, isn't that what it said about the Pharisees? Well, you don't want the redemption, but then you keep others from coming in. Well, yeah, that's exactly what those Pharisees were doing. They were lying. They knew the Word. They were teaching illiterate people who didn't know the Word, couldn't even read. and they were lying to them about Christ. So, oh, he's not the guy, right? So just, we'll tell you when the guy comes, and we'll tell you who the guy is, who this Redeemer is when he comes. We'll point it out to you, right? So they were keeping people from entering the kingdom of God. So that's a severe punishment. Well, that hasn't changed because, Satan's still here. He's still doing his little trick. All he did was change a couple of words. Gee, we should talk about law about right now. That's what they do in the legal industry. Call it words of art. So in each little statute, they can take a word like, cat, and redefine cat as dog. So every time you read cat, actually means dog. So how confusing would that be? Well, that's what they do. That's exactly what they do. They take words, and every statute, you look at the front of it, if they have defined cat as dog, then every time you read where it says you think it's talking about, one thing. No, it meant something else because back at the beginning they redefined the word. And then in the next statute, they can define dog as a cat. They can define dog as a wall or a road or whatever they want to define it. They just define it. Now every time you read it, and you have to insert whatever the correct definition of the word is when you read it so you understand the context. So that's what they do in law. They change the context. Now you got a dictionary that you're supposed to go by, but if they redefine it, then what's in their dictionary, their own legal dictionary, does not apply. It's what the statute said at the first page. You got to go back to the first page. Look at the definitions. That's what it means. What's in that on that first page? Go back there and look, because if your word that you're looking at's back there, then whatever they defined it as, that's the new definition. Okay. Same thing in law, man. If I got into that, you would just be steaming once you understood how the whole legal industry is just giving you the shaft from the day you were born. That would be a great teaching. So, we'll come back with 18, I'm pretty sure. Malachi 3:1, and that only has one cross reference. Thanks for watching.